Joining us tonight is Republican candidate for the U.S. Senate, Carlos Baruf, who has just completed his tour of 67 Florida counties this week. You may also know him as the man behind Medallion Homes. And Carlos, thanks for being here. And I got to ask you, I've been wondering how you did the 67 counties so fast, and then the story breaks yesterday about the
speeding tickets?
Your need for speed, 103 miles an hour. My gosh.
Yeah, well, what are you going to do? You're in a hurry.
I know that, but some people might be watching that and say, geez, that's a little reckless.
Not really. It wasn't raining.
Where were you going?
I was going to meet my future wife.
Okay. Well, I tell you what, that 67 county tour, you have been making a lot of news, and I want to talk for a moment about what you said about the president, calling him an animal, because, it struck a lot of people that you may agree with the president, you may disagree with the president, every president, but there is a certain way that you treat the office. And the question that some people have raised is, does it say more about you than it does about him?
I speak pretty passionately, and at the end of the day, I'm pretty passionate about the dismemberment of our military for 7.5 years, and sometimes the Cuban comes out in me.
I know, but an animal, I mean...
Well, it is what it is, I mean, would I say it again? No, probably not, because it was in the middle of a passionate speech I was making. It was unscripted. I don't script anything, and that's just the way it came out.
Well, I mean, we all say things that we later regret, but do you want to apologize to the president?
No, I don't. When he wants to apologize to the American people for what he's done to our military and what he's done to our health care, then when the Democrats do that, then maybe I'll contemplate that.
Okay. Hey, you also, on the tour, been called him out in terms of saying that when he went to Cuba, he should have stayed there.
Yes.
Was it wrong for him to reestablish relations with Cuba?
Under the conditions he did, absolutely. The Cuban people got nothing. But then again, the Cuban people or the American people, whenever he negotiates something, we get nothing.
Was it wrong for him to visit Cuba?
Absolutely. It's disrespectful to many patriots that gave up their life for freedom in Cuba. And the idea that none of the Cuban people in Cuba got nothing. Dissidents are still jailed. There is no free press. There is an American who's been exiled there for years who killed a policeman in New Jersey. We got nothing out of it.
But I believe that you said a couple of years ago that you don't agree with the human rights record of China, but we still have relations with them.
It was part of an interview, and they clipped out a couple of pieces. It was a 10-minute interview, and as the media has been known to do, they take a piece what they want. They didn't have the whole interview.
Right. Have you ever been to Cuba?
I have.
When?
In September of 11.
Who'd you go with?
Oh, I went with the airport authority.
Okay. Did you go with the Alliance for Responsible Cuba Policy Foundation?
I think so. It was Steve Burton who was the chairman of the Tampa Internet. It was a friend of mine. He called me up out of the blue and said, send me a check and send me a copy of your passport. You're going to Cuba with us. And that's how I went.
But the trip, was it not organized by Albert Fox, who is known in the area, somebody who has dedicated his life to restoring?
After I decided to go on the trip, I found out who the guy was that organized it. The guy that invited me and I said yes to is a guy named Steve Burton, who is unfortunately no longer with us. He passed away after a heart transplant.
One of the people who were on that trip with you contacted us about that trip. His name is Victor DeMaio. Listen for a moment what he has to say.
This was not any ordinary flight. This is the inaugural flight from Tampa to Havana in over half a century. It took place in 2011. And I went as a guest, a delegation with the Alliance for Responsible Cuba Policy Foundation. And lo and behold, on that trip, one of the people in the delegation with me was a gentleman named Carlos Baruf. He, along with everyone else in delegation, felt strongly, the same way, which is that we have to end this trade and travel embargo with Cuba. I mean, that's the bottom line.
So were you for ending the embargo with Cuba then, but changed your mind now?
No, I have never changed my mind. I have always been for relationships with Cuba, but under certain conditions that Obama did not adhere to in any shape, way, or form. So I've never changed my position. Neither has Marco Rubio. If we got certain things, we should do business with Cuba. We got nothing. But this president never gets anything for the Cuban people in this case, or the American people.
So why?
So no, I haven't changed, Alan. Though you were going to ask me the question 4 times and try to make me change, but that's not the case.
But why is it okay for you to go to Cuba and not the president?
Well, because first of all, I was invited by the chairman of Tampa International Airport at the time, who was a friend of mine, and he thought it would be interesting for me to go. So I went.
But wasn't his goal and the goal of others who went on
that
trip?
Wait. First of all, the president went after he'd already opened the doors. He didn't go to negotiate how he was going to open the doors. He went after he'd already opened the doors and said, here we are, we're going to offer our financial system and all of the benefits of doing business with the United States. And then after he went to visit, it was already, the doors were already open.
But the goal
he got nothing.
But the goal of Mr. Burton and other people who were interested in the airport authority was to lay the groundwork for more regular travel between the U.S. and Cuba, correct?
The goal was simply to go as a mission to see what was there and what they wanted from us. And the truth of the matter is, what I saw, quite frankly, was disappointing, and I had really no interest when I got back.
Except for...
If you notice, by the way, I never paid attention to Cuba again after that trip.
Right, but the fact is, Cuba has had problems with their human rights record way before that.
And they still do. I'm not the president of the United States. I didn't negotiate opening Cuba. Obama did.
But you met with Cuban authorities about...
We met with one Cuban authority.
All right, so you met with somebody with the Cuban government about the advantages of normalizing travel.
No, they tried to sell us on the advantages of us normalizing travel. It's a different thing.
So
I was there.
But you may understand why the people who were on that trip and who organized that trip now see what you're saying about the president's trip.
Quite frankly, I don't even remember that gentleman. I didn't spend any time with this Victor gentleman.
Let's listen to another comment from Victor.
Okay.
To criticize a president when you yourself were there and you yourself espouse the same viewpoint or similar point of the president, which is, you know, we need to get rid of these barriers, it's very hypocritical for him as a politician to say I'm not a politician, because that's what politicians do. They change their minds. And Carlos Baruf is doing the same thing.
So you've been running these commercials around the state saying you are the non-politician. You are not one of these guys. And then people watch your position on Cuba and say, geez, he just sounds like the other guys.
You know what? I guess in about 87 days, the voters will decide for themselves.
Okay. Just yesterday, your colleagues or your competitors in the Republican primary debated for the first time down in Boca Raton. The person who organized that debate said that they did not know that you weren't going there until they heard it secondhand. What happened?
I don't know what happened. I was never going to go, so I don't understand what happened.
But they said that you did commit to going to the debate.
I don't even manage my own schedule. I haven't managed my own schedule for 3 months. So
is it important?
I had a conflict and I didn't go. That's all there is to it.
But is it important for you to debate your Republican challengers?
When there's somebody worth debating. At this point, I don't think there is any.
Well, you have a number of congressmen, the lieutenant governor, an ex-CIA.
Those are true career politicians, Alan.
But wouldn't it be useful for Republican voters in Florida to see you on stage with the other candidates for the U.S. Senate?
At the appropriate time, I'm sure we will have that opportunity.
Okay. Let me ask you a couple questions because your campaign directed us to some of your issues in terms of cutting down on greed in the U.S. government. And a couple things jumped out at me. And one would be your proposal to cut the federal government civilian workforce by 20%. And that sounds good unless maybe you're a veteran who has to deal with the VA and is not...
Oh, because the VA is doing such a great job now, huh?
Well, would it do a better job with 20% fewer people?
People don't make efficiencies in quality of delivery. Now that I know firsthand from being the chairman of the Florida Healthcare Commission. So if you'd have paid attention to those people that came down from Baltimore and Salt Lake City and Oklahoma City and spoke to us, experts, true experts in the delivery of healthcare in this country, and they tell you repeatedly that there's 35 to 50% waste in the delivery of healthcare in this country, that tells you that it's not about people. It's about inefficiencies in the federal government. It's very, very, very simple.
Well, one of the biggest issues facing...
Let me go one step.
Sure.
FAA is a perfect example. In 2000, they had 14,000 air traffic controllers. In 2013, they had 14,500 traffic controllers. In that same period of time, travel in this country in both general aviation and airlines dropped 25%. So even though there's less flights, 25% less people flying in the air, not people, airplanes, they went up 500 people on staff.
Right,
Does that make any sense? Of course not.
Let me
That's
ask you
what federal
another
government
question.
doesn't make sense.
Let me ask you another question about the VA, because one of the biggest issues has been wait times.
Absolutely.
And so please tell me how 20% fewer employees at the VA is going to help vets.
First of all, my comment says in the federal workforce, federal civilian workforce. It doesn't say 20% in the VA, Alan. Okay? Maybe the VA gets cut 10%. Maybe another department gets cut 15%. Maybe another department cuts 25%. Well, let me tell you something. If you don't think there's waste in the federal government, then you really are disconnected from how the federal government doesn't work.
No one is saying that. I'm just asking you, with that one agency, one other quick issue from your thing here. You talked about automatic pay raises for members of Congress.
Which, not raises.
You said that you would stop automatic pay raises for members.
Repeal automatic pay raises.
But Congress has not gotten pay raises in years since the
No. They give pay raises every year from 1989 to today. In 1989, they were making $74,000. Now they're making $174,000.
But they haven't accepted those pay raises in a number of years.
In a number of years, but they do have them automatic, and they should repeal that benefit. Why should they? They should vote for increases in pay.
But that pay hasn't gone up
during the recession.
Right.
I understand.
So, but not
when
now.
the recession rolls over, they can stop not taking the pay increases.
Okay.
They're not stupid. Public relations is absolutely.
We got to wrap it up. Let's do this again.
Okay.
All right. Thanks a lot.